Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you being here. This is a special evening. We get the opportunity to meet and hear from the three candidates vying for the District 25 council seat. It's been my pleasure to serve you for the last 8 years, and I look forward to hearing from who eventually is going to be my successor to that position. Tonight's format is going to be like this. We're going to go, it will be recorded, so I will put out a video recording of this so you can farm it out to your friends and neighbors who were not able to make the meeting tonight. I will introduce each candidate and give them an opportunity to tell you about themselves, and they will have 3 minutes each to do that. Subsequent to that, I've got a series of questions that several of us have thought through, and I've taken feedback from community members who've reached out to me and wanted to ask certain questions of the candidates. I will serve as moderator. Each candidate will also conclude tonight with a 2-minute closing, so I expect to be out of here in right at an hour. We will hang around afterwards, and you can feel free to talk one-on-one and have your personal conversations with each candidate. We've got the building for a while, so I encourage them to stick around as long as you want to talk to them, so you'll have that opportunity. So without further ado, I want to introduce our candidates to you. First to my right is Rolando Toyos. Next to him, Jeff Prepteet. And next to him, David Ackerman. And we will begin with Rolando Toyos.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for setting this up. My name is Dr. Rolando Toyos. I'm an ophthalmologist in town. My wife, Melissa, is also an ophthalmologist. We have a clinic in the district, Toyos Clinic. It's on Crestmore. I've been in Tennessee for 25 years. I was recruited out of Northwestern by St. Jude's. I started out with 2 employees and 1 clinic. We now have 6 clinics and several employees. My background is my parents escaped Castro's Cuba and became citizens. My brother and I became citizens. They preached to us the importance of giving back to the community, what a great country this is, and that we should always be involved in the community. My brother and I have both been involved in the community ever since high school. Currently, I'm also at Skyline Hospital as a part of the trauma team in the emergency room. I tell people if you want to see how a city is running and how a city is doing, just go to the emergency room. And then my brother is a retired intelligence officer. For the last 10 years, he's been working in Washington, D.C., with the DOD, Department of Defense, Department of Justice, and also the DEA. He told me if I say any more that he would have to kill me, so that's all you're going to get of that. I've been talking to you on the phone and meeting with you, and I think you guys have the same concerns that I do, is crime, homelessness, addiction, and drugs. And I hope to talk about those things throughout tonight with the questions. And I think I could represent you very well with my background and the things that I've done. The last thing, since I have time, before I became a doctor, I was actually a high school science teacher and basketball coach. I won a national teacher award, and I also won a state championship before I went to medical school. And thank you.
Thank you. He knows how to perfectly use up 3 minutes, so I'll give him that. Jeff Prepteet.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you all for being here this evening and for your conscientious commitment to our community. I want to thank Russ for setting this up, and I want to thank Lipscomb for hosting us this evening. I'm Jeff Prepteet. I'm running to represent you and the 25th District on the Nashville Metro Council. I'm a Tennessee native and the proud son of Haitian refugees. My family has always been proud of the life that being here in Tennessee has provided for them. I can recall as my parents drove me down the road to take me to college, we packed up our powder blue 1995 Nissan Quest. And as we drove down the road, my parents started talking to me about how proud they were of the work that they had put in, how that moment of taking me to college was the culmination of decades of hard work that they have put in and that our community had put in. As we continued to drive down the road, my mother, a woman who came to this country not knowing the language, having little to no formal education, but yet somehow taught all 5 of her kids how to read and write and sent all 5 of them to college, told me how I had the responsibility to use the opportunities that I had been given to make my community a better place. And that's why I'm running. I'm running to make this American dream, this American promise of which I am a product, a reality for every person in our community. As the product of a public school education, I understand the importance of investing in our public schools and in MNPS to make sure that our teachers and that our students have the resources that they need. As a former public defender, I understand the need to invest in community safety. I understand the need to invest in safe, walkable neighborhoods, to invest in sustainable infrastructure and development that is based on what our community needs, not the influence of outside developers. I humbly ask for your vote this evening, and I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all so much.
And now we'll hear from David Ackerman.
It is wonderful to be here, and it's great to see the amount of interest in this race that we have going on, and it's exciting to be a part of that. I've been in Nashville most of my adult life. I live in a house that my great uncle built in the 50s. As a kid, I lived at the corner of 42nd and Idaho in West Nashville. We left Nashville for a little bit, I came back to go to grad school at Vandy, and I've stayed here ever since. I worked here at Lipscomb for a couple of years, and then I left and went to work for one of their vendors, and I've been with them for 18 years. We're a software company that works with colleges and universities throughout the world, and so I get to see a lot of what the output is from various secondary schools across the country. And it's interesting to see that from that perspective. The things that are important to me that got me running includes traffic, which to me, traffic is more than just the cars going down the road. We've already talked about walkability with sidewalks. We got bicyclists that need to have safe places to ride. We also need transit so that we can get that transit and that traffic under control. We have a lot of growth here in the Green Hills area, and District 25 has grown quite a bit over the past several years, and we just need to make sure our infrastructure is invested to handle that growth that we've got and the more growth we will be having. The other piece that has interested me has been public safety, both fire and police. My uncle was fire chief of Nashville back in the 70s, and so I've got cousins that have retired from the fire department recently. And so I've got a lot of interest in what goes on with the fire department. Police department, I've got cousins who have been serving in that role for various roles within that department over the years. And have a lot of interest in what happens with our public safety. We need more patrols. We need to make sure that we can address the issues that I'm seeing on next door and the things that you guys have talked to me about when we've chatted on the phone or in person. Those are the things that I'm interested in. And then building better schools. We have some really bright spots in metro schools, and we need to find ways to take what we've learned within those bright spots and spread it beyond. We need to build up the schools that we have in District 25. We've got some wonderful elementary schools, some really good middle schools, and we need to continue to support Hillsborough in our high school. And we've just got a lot of things going well for us. I'm David Ackerman. My wife and I have been involved in lots of things over the years, PTO. We've been involved with Nashville Inner City Ministries. I could name several others, but we have been involved in a lot of things over the years and just really looking forward to serving District 25 in all ways that we can. Thank you.
Thank you all. Now we're going to move to our questioning phase. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer questions, And if we have any time left, maybe we'll have one or two that we could pose from the audience. And I will start with David, and we'll go laterally, and we will rotate the order back and forth so that that would be fair for you all. And one of the things that I've found on the campaign trail, especially in forums like this, is oftentimes we're challenged with the time limits that we're given to really answer questions. So the first question is really kind of an extension of what you just did to give you a little bit more time to address that. And I'll ask it like this. Why are you seeking this office? David?
Well, like I was saying, traffic, safety, and schools are the three things that have really been driving me. To say I had a watershed moment is not accurate, because I didn't. It's just that these things have culminated over time. And those are the things that make our community very livable. And we've got some bright spots here in District 25, examples of each of those that really is doing well. And we need to take those things and apply them elsewhere. I love Nashville. And I used to travel a lot, and now I'm not traveling, and it's time for me to give back a little bit more than I've been able to.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, so I'm running, like I said, to make sure that we have principle-determined leadership here in District 25. Since my first day in Nashville, I started working to improve the lives of folks within our community. I spent nearly 3 years at the Public Defender's Office before becoming staff attorney with the ACLU of Tennessee, where I'm continuing to fight for the rights of folks throughout our city. During my time here, I've also volunteered with Books Brothers, which is an extension of My Brother's Keeper, which is an early childhood literacy program. I'm also on the board of the Davidson County Young Democrats. I've been endorsed by Representatives Bob Freeman and Caleb Himmer, as well as Planned Parenthood. Since the first day that I've been here, I've been working for this community. And that is what I will continue to do as your Metro Council member. And that's why I'm running, because we need somebody who's principled, determined, focused on what our community actually needs, and is giving voice and power to those within our community.
Rolando?
Yeah, you were talking about watershed moments. I think I've had a few over the last 2 years. So when I first came to Tennessee, I lived in Memphis. And then I met my wife, and we had some kids, and we moved here because we really liked Nashville. We liked the schools, and we thought it'd be a great place to raise them. And now all three of them are going to college, and they're doing very well. So I have to thank Nashville for that. But over the last 2 years, I've seen some things in Nashville that are kind of concerning. And then talking to my brother, who has experience in crime and gangs and other things. There's some things here that are very concerning. So let me tell you my watershed moment. We got back from a trip, and I told my wife, "Hey, I'm gonna go get a workout." So I'm driving the workout, and I go, "God, I didn't see one of our cars, and the garage door was open." So I call her and I go, see if Katie, took the car out and, left the garage door open. I just call Katie. No, she didn't leave the garage door open. She doesn't know where the car is. So we get the tracker. We call the cops. They said they'd give us a call. They think they found our car. So I'm at Skyline Hospital going to the ER, and they said they've caught the person. I know I got 30 seconds. This is not a 30-second story. And Cubans can't do a 30-second story either. So I get to the ER, and they said, the guy that stole your car is in the ER. He was shot by the cops. They had a shootout with your car. So I'm looking over, and I'm seeing the guy, the perp who got shot. And it was a shocking moment. Okay, I'm done. I've got 3 other stories, and I'll get back to them.
It's okay. I'll give you another opportunity to tell them.
Sounds good.
All right, my next question, and I'll start with you, Jeff. This is a 2-pronged question, so I'm going to give you 2 separate 2-minute opportunities to answer. We will start with, and this came from one of your constituents or your potential constituents. What do you see as priority issues specifically in District 25 And the second part of that question will be, what are your solutions to these issues? But we'll make the first one question two, and we'll give you another opportunity to throw the solutions in there. So you can take that approach if you like. Yeah?
Yeah, so I'd say that there are three main areas that are priority issues that need to be addressed. Walkability and safety. I think having safe, walkable neighborhoods is a public safety issue. In Nashville, this year alone, we've already had 17 pedestrian deaths. I believe that those are preventable, and I think that there are ways that we can address that, as well as with public safety, making sure that we are investing in our emergency services. Here in the district, we only have one firehouse, and as the population continues to grow, we need to make sure that they have the resources that they need to be able to respond to emergency services and that their equipment is able to continue to run. Also with public transportation, I think we need to, and again, I know I have another 2 minutes with that, but I think we also need to address the accessibility and the reliability of public transportation.
Thank you for that. Again, you can talk about the issues now and solutions in the next answer. Rolando, to you.
All right, crime. All right, so we've had our cars broken into 2 months ago. I had medical equipment that was going on a mission trip. Get out the door, go to my car, car's broken into, my medical equipment and stuff that we were going to send to Haiti has been stolen. I called the cops. They said, the first question they asked was there a gun in the car? And I said, well, that's an interesting question. Why'd you ask that? And he goes, because over 50% of the car break-ins, there's a car stolen. We've had our clinic vandalized. We've had homeless people who have slept in the stairway. We've seen drug paraphernalia. So called my brother. I said, can you tell me a little bit about background of what's going on here? And he says, well, you guys have gangs, and there's a drug trade that's going through you. You have MS-13 is in your area. The Jalisco group is in your area. So there's this drug trafficking that's going on. In the ER, what I'm seeing is we got young kids who are ODing. Why? Because they're putting fentanyl in normal pills, so a kid thinks they're taking an Ativan or an Ambien or Adderall. They take one pill and it dies. Nobody's talking about the DEA's program of one pill can kill, because these pills are being laced with fentanyl, and we can get into that. So there's things going on here in Nashville, and if we want to keep Nashville, we're going to have to get more involved as a community. And my parents always said, don't sit on the sidelines, don't watch things happen, get out there and do something about it, and this is my effort to do that.
Thank you. David?
Well, walkability is definitely one of the things that I think we've got here in Green Hills. I was at the WeGo meeting a couple of weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago. Anyway, one of the things they were talking about, the survey of the folks who ride, 95% of them walk to where they first catch the bus. And in order to do that, we've got to have sidewalks that are safe for them, which is fine in certain areas within our district. But there are a couple of streets that really need some in order to make that more accessible for our neighbors. And so we need to focus on how do we make that walkable and safely do that. The other piece is public safety with police and fire. I agree. The fire department needs to have the equipment, the types of equipment that they need to be responsive to the types of things that they anticipate happening within this district. The second thing is the police department. I'm grateful that the Metro Council did pass the budget that included enough to fund the open positions that fire and police have. Now we just got to get those guys recruited and trained. But once we get that, that will help us with that. And so I'm interested in seeing how we can approach that and make that more methodical on the walkability and then encouraging the public safety.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the solutions, and we'll start with you, Rolando.
So I think we need to involve ourselves as a community, like Chief Drake's idea of getting a council member with the community, getting some community organizers together and talking about the problems and getting more of a neighborhood watch and things go. We definitely have to get involved. We just can't sit back and go, oh, my car got broken into. The other thing is education. I think we're letting our young people down by not telling them the risks and the problems that are going on. This is not the old days where you can get a pill from your best friend and say, oh yeah, I've taken Ambien and give it here, because kids are dying. The opioid crisis didn't go away with COVID. It's actually getting worse. We've lost 130,000 people due to opioid overdoses. The cops are actually giving naloxone and Narcan. We see it in the ER all the time, where we're actually reviving these people who would be an overdose. That's about 30 to 40,000 people. But now with this fentanyl being cut into just normal everyday drugs that you think are innocuous, but they're not really. This is a true crisis that we have to deal with. And the Metro Council, they need more healthcare guidance, and they need somebody telling them about this. I'm all for walkability, but that's not a tragedy. Losing a 16-year-old kid who's an honor student because they got a pill from a friend, that's a tragedy. So I want to do the walkability thing, but that's in priorities. We want to save our young kids, get rid of crime, and we want to stop these gangs from taking over Nashville.
Thank you for that. David?
Like I said, if we can help find ways to help the police department and the fire department recruit for these openings that they'll have, that'll help a lot. And then encouraging for more patrols in our area will help deter some pieces of the crime that we're facing. But the walkability, we've just got to work together to come up with where are the most strategic spaces that we need to have sidewalks placed, and then finding dedicated funding to make that happen. And finding ways to do that creatively so that we're not putting all the burden on all of us on our property taxes. And that's a dream. But at the same time, I think it's something that's somewhat achievable if we can find creative people to get together and work on creative solutions to find the ways to fund these methods in ways that are not putting burdens on us as taxpayers. The other piece is that mass transit needs to be a part of that, because I think that not only affects, Hillsborough does rely on, for our students, for the students there at Hillsborough, they come in on bus a lot. But the other piece is we've got places here that need to hire folks that can't afford to live in Green Hills, but we still need them to work and to fill the job openings that we have. And some of those have cars, some of them do not. And we need to find a way for that to be easily for them to get here. My son, when he moved out, he moved to I-24 in Harding Place for a while, and he was still working in Green Hills. He rode the bus one time. It took him 2 hours, and then he didn't have a way to get home. So we've got to find ways to make that better.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, so I think it's important that we are using our resources as efficiently as possible to take care of the needs in our community and take care of the folks here in the 25th District. Ensuring that we have sidewalks where it's feasible, and where not feasible, ensuring that we have protected walking lanes and protected bike lanes. I think that those are things that are crucial for the quality of life here. I think it's important for us to be able to go on a walk without having to get into our car. I think it's important for us to not have to risk our lives simply by taking a walk. Like I said, there have already been 17 pedestrian deaths here in Nashville. Every single one of those deaths is a tragedy, and I believe that they are preventable if we have the proper infrastructure. With our public transportation, ensuring that we have access within our neighborhoods. The majority of folks that utilize our transit do walk to their bus stops. I want to make sure that we actually have community bus lines that allow for increased accessibility, ensuring that the bus lines that we do have are high-frequency bus lines, so there's not a time tax on those who are utilizing our public transportation services. Also want to make sure that our bus services and our infrastructure is not only ADA compliant, but ADA compassionate, because we have a lot of differently abled and elderly neighbors, and I want to make sure that those who aren't necessarily oftentimes in the public sphere aren't forgotten. I want to make sure that out of sight does not mean out of mind. Also want to make sure that we are investing in our emergency services, making sure that our fire department has the resources that we need, and that we're investing in crime intervention programs so nobody has to be a victim of a crime in the first place.
Thank you for that. Before we move to the next question, I just want to recognize a couple of my colleagues who have spent the last 8 years of their lives serving our community who joined us. Councilmember Angie Henderson, who's also running for vice mayor. Angie and I often refer to ourselves as Team Green Hills. And then Councilmember Bob Mendez, at-large council member. Thank you both for taking time out of your day to join us here. The next question, being a district council member under the current structure is designed to be a part-time position. And many who serve these positions have jobs and family responsibilities. If elected, how do you plan on communicating with your constituents who reach out to you and keeping constituents informed on issues relating to the district? We'll start with you, David.
Okay. I do work full-time. I work out of my house. I've been working out of my house for 18 years, so it's not a COVID change. The only thing that's changed since COVID is I don't get on an airplane or in a car and drive somewhere or fly somewhere. I do all my work out of my house. That gives me flexibility that some people don't have, and so I'm excited to be able to do that. Yes, I do have a family. I've got 3 children, but they're all out of the house, and so we're empty nesters, and it does afford me the opportunity to do some things after hours as well as during the day when needed. So I think that we'll be able to manage that, and I think those of you who have reached out to me have found that I'm responsive already, and if not, please see me and I will fix that because I think I've responded to everybody. So,
thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, so one thing that I would do as your Metro Council member is taking the lead from Russ, ensuring that there are regular newsletters that are going out to the constituents, making sure that you are informed. Because we've got about 17,000 folks in this community. I want to make sure that I am accessible and responsive, but trying to respond to 17,000 emails is a massive undertaking. So I want to make sure that you have access to those resources and to that information from the jump. And if there are further questions, that you're able to call, text, or email me to follow up. Want to make sure that I'm accessible and that I'm responsive, because those two things must be coupled together. Because if you're accessible but not responsive, that's no good. And if you're responsive but not accessible, that's no good either. So those are the things that I would be doing to make sure that you all are informed.
Thank you. Rolando?
Yeah, I think you should just look at someone's work history and what they've done and how responsive they've been. I think I'm one of the only physicians, and I talk to physicians all the time, they think I'm crazy. I think I'm one of the only physicians that give all my patients my cell phone number. And I tell them to text me and I'll respond back. My job is to listen to people's problems and come up with a solution. I also have 3 daughters. They don't worry about texting me with their problems and telling me how I can fix them. So I'm a good fixer of problems. I don't mind people calling me and I respond to them. I think it's a lot quicker now that we have the technology to text somebody and say, hey, this is the problem, and I can immediately respond to that problem. I always make time. If I decide I'm going to do something, I make time for it. So I've been the chairman and part of the board of the Nashville Hispanic Chamber. When I decided to do this, I told the chamber, look, my time, I don't want to cheat the constituency, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to step down from the board so I can devote more time to this. I've been part of the United States Global Leadership. I've let them know that I'm running for this office and I would not be able to give them the time. But I took this very seriously, this commitment, and I said to myself, if you give me the honor and elect me, you will get my full bandwidth for this.
Thank you for that. All right, the next question deals with zoning. One of the most powerful components of this position of district council member involves zoning issues. No one expects you to be an expert on the entire zoning code, especially as a new district council member. What constituents do want to know is how you intend to handle requests from neighbors to create areas of sensitive density similar to things like contextual overlays and downzone bills that help create areas of sensitive development for neighborhoods, and how you plan on handling residential and commercial attempts by property owners to rezone their property. And we'll start with you, Jeff.
Yeah, so I think in those situations, the most crucial thing, and what you'll hear from me throughout this, is centering the voices of those within our community and the needs of those within our community. One thing that I think Russ has done very well is conducting those community meetings based off of those issues. So making sure that if somebody brings something to me and they're like, oh, yes, I want to rezone this specific parcel to do X, Y, Z. One of my first questions is going to be, what do your neighbors think about this? What does the community as a whole think about this? Because I want to make sure that we are truly centering your voices and giving power to your voices. So conducting those community meetings, doing studies on how it will actually long-term affect our community as well. So just making sure that we're doing that work, bringing in our community, and making sure that we're centering your voices and your needs.
Rolando?
Yeah, so I think this is why you need somebody in the healthcare space, because growth is great, but we want to be healthy. So there's a thing called the blue zones. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's the 5 places in the world where people live the longest and are the healthiest. And there's a couple of things and traits that they all have, and one is smart growth. And this is something that has been talked about a lot in all these different cities, is making your space where you live a healthy space. So we're talking about walking, being able to go to a park. If you look at the healthiest people, they're in a community and they get together as a community and they have space to do that. So if we sat down and you're telling me about zoning, I'd like to hear, like, how is this going to make our community continue to be healthy or healthier? How is this going to promote wellness? How is this going to keep the reasons why we all love living here and the reason why you're here tonight, keep that and not take that away from us?
Thank you. David?
I too would it's one of those things where you have meetings and you solicit the input from the folks who are directly affected by the request. So you've got the requester, and then you've got the neighbors that live around that requested change, whatever that might be. And is that something that people are wanting, or people are opposed to, or people are in agreement with? That's fine. If they want to do that, that's not going to be a problem for our neighborhood. It's not going to adversely affect us. We're fine with that. But whatever the answer might be, I want to get that input to understand what really is it. I mean, I can see it from my perspective, but in some of those requests, they're not going to be in places where I'm directly living in that particular neighborhood within District 25. But you are. And you're the ones that know what that impact is or isn't going to be for you. And so I want to understand, what is that impact and how do we mitigate that impact? Or how can that property owner make an adjustment that would fit within the boundaries of what impact we're willing to live with?
Thank you for that. Next phase, we'll start with you, Rolando. And you guys have already touched on this quite a bit already, but I'll give you a little bit more time to do so. You may be able to add to the 30-second story that I cut you off of here on this one. So we're going to talk about crime. Statistically, we have seen as a city some improvement in some areas with certain property crimes and how we're doing there. But we've also seen some trends that aren't as good in some of the violent crimes. You all have touched on some of the things that are concerning to our constituents here. So in the framework of that backdrop, I would ask you how each of you view public safety. And we'll start with you, Rolando.
So I don't think we could bury our heads in the sand and say that none of these things are happening and that we're not seeing more crime. I've talked to you and you've said, look, I'm seeing more crime. My car got broken into. One lady told me that there was a carjacking in the district. If you had said that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people would be astonished. This MS-13 group, they pick cities like this to expand, and what they do is they look for disaffected youth. So I really do think as a community we have to go in and help our kids and tell them the dangers of joining gangs and what these gangs are going to do to try to infiltrate into our schools. They're making billions and billions of dollars, so this is big business. So it's not just a gang to get a group of people together. They're making a ton of money off of this, and we could stop it if we talk to our youth and tell them the dangers of one pill can kill, the dangers of taking these drugs, and how these drugs are going to alter their minds, not just for now, but in the future, and get them to understand that we can stop that. If they have nobody to sell to, they will go and pick another city. But we have to be very open on what's going on in this city and not go, oh, everything is just fine and dandy, and let's just keep going with the status quo. And in talking to you, you feel the same way, and you feel like we've got to do something now before this gets too far along, and I agree. And there's things that we can do. I've got a couple more seconds. One thing that we don't have and we could do is a high-intensity drug trafficking. Once we're a county that we don't have that designation. If we get that designation, we can bring in federal to work with our local because they're overstretched. Just recently, there was a car accident in our neighborhood, District 25. It was about 7 hours before police officers could come and document what happened. Why? Because they're stretched in a lot of different ways, and they need help.
Thank you for that. David?
It's no secret Nashville has some crime issues, and there's a lot of things that cause that. But we need to find ways to support our police and fire departments so that they can provide both equipment and personnel and then the training so that they can continue to build upon the wonderful history that we have with them. And yes, we need more patrols within Nashville, within Green Hills especially. I've not seen, several people have told me they've not seen a police car in a long time in this area unless they're responding to something specific. And part of that has to do with the fact that they've been understaffed for a while. And hopefully we can get those filled, and then they can be able to beef that up a bit. Public safety is also personal responsibility. We all have to be more vigilant of what we're doing. There's some things that the police department has put out that is ways that we can be a little more vigilant on our own as well, to be more prepared to prevent some of those things from happening, or at least minimize the impact. And so there are some things we can learn. And yes, we need to teach our children. I've been involved with inner city ministries partly because that's addressing the kids when they're a very young age in elementary school. We've done some volunteer work at Napier Elementary as well as a result of that. Because you get to have a relationship with some of these kids and their parents, and you start learning why they're having challenges. You got a single mom who working 2 jobs, and it's just tough. And so we've got to find ways to help with that as well, to have that the way to beef up what we do have. But in District 25, it's patrols, it's foot traffic so that we can walk safely and bicycle safely, and it's transit so that we can get the right people in here to fill the jobs that we have.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, so anybody who's spoken to me knows that community safety is one of the core principles of this campaign, because I believe that community safety is multifaceted. It's something that we have to look at in every single policy that we have here in the city. When it comes to transportation, when it comes to walkability, when it comes to our education system, those are the things that we need to be, the community safety needs to be embedded in all of those policies. One of the things that I want to make sure that we're doing is investing our resources to make sure that we are preventing people from ever committing a crime, investing in those interruption programs so that nobody has to be a victim of a crime. Because being a police officer is already a hard enough job. I want to make their job easier, making sure that we are allocating our resources to the best possible uses. So community safety, I believe, has to be embedded in every single one of our policies to make sure that we have a better Nashville that feels like home for us.
Thank you for that. All right, our next question deals with major financial decisions that the city will make. So we just recently came off of a vote on the Titans Stadium. You know, there's a popular question that is floating around the campaign trail. How would you have voted? I'm not going to ask you that question because I don't think that's fair to people who didn't go through what we as council members went through to reach that decision. But we look at the Titans Stadium, the convention center, the NFL issue coming to town in the late 1990s, the soccer stadium, and what we're about to embark on, the BMS proposal. How do you plan, this is the way I'll frame the question, is how do you plan on approaching these issues that you will face during your council term? And let's see, I think, is it your turn to start? I think your turn to start right now, Rolando.
Yeah, I think, so I'm a fiscally conservative person. I've run my own business for 25 years. People in the clinic will come up to me and say, hey, let's spend money on this, let's spend money on that. And I slow them down and I'd say, well, okay, what's the return on investment? Is this a good investment for the clinic? Will it make the clinic grow? Will it make the clinic better? And I will listen. I will listen to what they have to say, and we can make a decision. I think this is the same thing. And I talked to Russ about that Titan situation, and he explained to me why he voted for the Titan Stadium, and it made sense to me. I don't have the figures in front of me, but one is I'm going to be tight with your taxpayer money. I know you're paying taxes, and you work hard for those taxes, for that money, and I will treat it like my own. And I think one of the problems that we've had in this country is that we've had the printing press, and we're just spending money that we don't have. We're close to $30 trillion in debt. And I want to take that fiscal responsibility and take that to the Metro Council. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. If it'll make the city better, then and is fiscally responsible, then I'm all for it. So I will take everything on an individual basis and listen to my constituency on what they want. But I also want to be tight with your tax dollars.
David?
I too am fiscally conservative. One of the things I look at is what's the least amount of impact to our property taxes. That's what hits most people in the pocketbook. That's the first place you see it. Major expenses, it's looking for creative ways, because there's not going to be very many of those that come before council that aren't going to have a good story behind it, because the people that are wanting it are going to have a good story. So it's a matter of understanding, okay, what really are the facts? How do we drill down and understand where is it coming from? What is the true benefit to the city of Nashville? I'm representing District 25. What's the true benefit to District 25? And then how do we make this funding work in a way that's not burdensome to the taxpayers of Davidson County and Metro Nashville? Those are the things that we've got to look for. And I think that it's a tightrope walk, because a lot of the things that we've all talked about that we are for, we could have them all if we had endless amounts of money and resources, right? As a project manager, that's what I deal with. I'm dealing with balancing budget and schedule and people resources to make things happen for my clients. This is no different. I work on $26 and $30 million projects all the time. And it's always a balancing act of what do we do that fits the funding structure that we can afford and minimize the additional burden that it could create. We just got to find ways to mitigate that.
Jeff?
So the primary question for me when examining public expenditures, because those are public dollars, those are your dollars. If we are going to be expending public dollars, it needs to be for the public benefit. It needs to be geared towards what our community is calling for and what our community needs. One of the things that I will do is utilize my experience as an attorney to be able to examine those contracts and examine those documents in deep detail and be able to understand the long-term, both legal and physical implications for our city and for our district. I want to make sure that we are investing in community-based development, making sure that our needs are centered as the decision maker for this district. I think the number one consideration for your representative here in District 25 is whether or not it is good for District 25 and good for the city.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll start with David. I did kind of get out of order last time, stuck you with the first guy twice. Let's talk about infrastructure, sidewalks, traffic calming, transit solutions. You've touched on this, all of you have at one point or another during the evening. So let's just throw this question at you. How do you see our current infrastructure and what do you plan to do about it? David?
We have some great examples of some good walkable streets in District 25. They've got sidewalks on both sides. There's enough of a curve in the road that it keeps people from going too terribly fast. But there are too few of those, and that's not just in District 25, that's citywide. I do know that when talking to the folks at WeGo, they want to be able to help influence the strategic placement of sidewalks based on the mass transit plan when they get one approved. That's another topic. But then what we want to do then but we also have streets that aren't going to feed a mass transit stop. I'll use Warfield as an example. Warfield's a street that's a great street for connecting from the neighborhoods over on this side over to Hillsborough Road and those businesses. It's not a very safe place to walk. And we all know that live over that way. And so that's one example of a street that needs some focus. And so it's looking at how do we identify those and get those on the books, on the schedule, and find ways to fund that in a way that's not burdensome to the taxpayers. That's what we've got to find. And it's easy to say it. We just need to roll up our sleeves and do it.
Yeah. As the population of our city continues to grow, it's going to be crucial that we are investing in our infrastructure. I think it's no secret that we've had an issue with potholes. As recently as this past winter, like I hit a pothole and we're not going to get into that. But we have a need for investing in infrastructure. And I think that, again, embedding those principles in our policies, I believe that that's a public safety issue as well. One area of our infrastructure that I think we also need to be examining how to update it is our stormwater infrastructure. By and large, it has not been updated since before the 2010 floods. As we are continuing to experience more extreme weather events, we need to make sure that that stormwater infrastructure is up to date and can handle the capacity of the development and growth that we are experiencing. It really only takes about 4 to 6 inches of water for a person to drown. If we are having consistent flooding in our streets and on our property, that's a risk to life, that's a risk to property. So I want to make sure that we're addressing those things. And again, allocating our resources to their most effective uses and making sure that we are centering those principles in our policies that are going to guide us going forward.
Rolando?
When I was choosing a place to live, sat down with the real estate agent and she was talking about flood zones, which, I'm a physician, I don't know about flood zones. But she was pointing out areas and going, this is a flood zone in that area, this is a flood zone, this is a flood zone. So, there's parts of this district that are in flood zones, and water is one of the things that the constituents were talking to me about, and also traffic. So as this Nashville grows, these are things that we're going to have to deal with, and I've seen this in other cities where they don't handle the growth very well. Let's take Atlanta. I hate going to Atlanta because of the traffic. Charlotte had the same problem. So I think we really have to absorb all this growth, maybe take a second to see how we're going to absorb all this growth so that, again, what I'd like to do is keep Nashville in a similar place where people go, this is a great place to live. We have areas to walk. This is a healthy place to live. and that we don't choke out all the good things of Nashville by not concentrating on infrastructure.
Thank you for that. My final question of the evening deals with affordability. We hear on the council from many people in the public about how Nashville is becoming less and less affordable for people who are working class, making working class wages to live. I want to know what your attitude about that is and what your thoughts about how to deal with that issue is as you enter into a potential council term. I believe we'll start with you, Jeff.
So affordability is something that is hitting all of us. I don't think it's isolated to one group, one demographic, one area. One thing that I want to make sure that I'm doing as your next Metro Council member is ensuring that District 25 is a place where you can buy a home, raise a family, and retire, and not be forced out after you retire because you've been completely priced out. I think that it's going to have to be a multifaceted solution to those, ensuring that we are working with public-private partnerships to utilize community benefit agreements to increase the number of housing units, being able to invest in those things throughout the city to make sure that we are addressing those needs. I want to make sure that we young professionals are able to come in to live, to make a living. I think that ensuring that we also have public transportation and like similar infrastructure is crucial to making sure that we have livability. Making sure that we are not overburdening our citizens and ensuring that there's not a time tax and other things that prevent upward mobility. So ensuring that we're investing in affordability is crucial, and I want to make sure that that's something that we are doing to make sure that we can maintain the character of our neighborhoods and of District 25 moving forward.
Rolando?
Yeah, I'm seeing this in our clinic here in Nashville, is that we have these jobs and people want these jobs, but the pricing of rent and housing and everything else has gone so high that recruiting is getting more difficult. And this is recruiting of front desk people, techs, and even doctors, where doctors were wanting to move here, start a family, and then they're looking at pricing of housing. They go, well, I thought this was an affordable place to live, but compared to X, Y, and Z, I'm not sure I could live here. And that becomes a problem. If we don't have affordable housing, you don't have the nurses, you don't have the techs, you don't have the doctors, you don't have the police officers, you don't have the firemen. Where have I seen this before? San Francisco. San Francisco used to be a beautiful, beautiful city. I grew up in Northern California before I moved to Tennessee. Beautiful, beautiful city, and what they did is they priced everybody out. So what would happen is all your normal workers would have to live farther and farther away. And with policy after policy after policy, they've turned that place. I won't even visit San Francisco anymore because it's such a crying shame. I don't want to see that happen to Nashville. You want to keep the beauty of Nashville and the group of people that actually make Nashville work, and that is, your first responders, that is your nurses, that is your doctors, your techs, bus drivers, teachers, all of these people. So we didn't deal with the homeless problem, but this kind of goes along with the homeless problem. And maybe we can sit here for one more question and how we're going to deal with the homeless problem.
David?
Affordability. I've heard them say lowercase a or uppercase a. Affordability is a challenge. We do need to have places that people can afford to live within Metro Nashville. A lot of our folks that work in Nashville that are working class end up moving outside the county because they have to move somewhere where it's more affordable. At the same time, no one sitting in this room wants affordability to reduce the value of your property. How do we balance those two is a difficult question. And just as Jeff was mentioning, is a multifaceted issue to solve that. It takes in certain areas, you need to make sure we've got the right density of building in certain spots. We've got to have creative funding so that we can afford to have housing that people can afford to live in. There are ways to do this. We've done this in a couple other spots here in town in the past 3 or 4 years. We can do a few more of those. And they've been success stories. And I think that we can replicate that a little bit more, at the same time still protecting the value of the properties that you have.
Thank you for that. And just to show you that sitting district council members can be good listeners, we will add an extra question. And we'll start with you, Rolando, and we will go to tackle the homelessness issue. So I will just throw that question out there to each of you to answer how you intend to address the homelessness issue that we're experiencing in this city. Rolando, you're first.
Yeah, so a lot of cities are dealing with this, and there are a couple of ways to do it. And having shelters has, you've got one city like San Diego that said, okay, we're going to take our money and build more shelters. And then you have another city that says, okay, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to actually try to find permanent housing for these people that go away. One thing that my brother pointed out to me is the number of military people who are homeless. It's in the thousands. It's close to 5,000 people who serve this country and who are now homeless. It's a crying shame that is something. What has worked in some of these cities is rehousing. Like once somebody loses a house, get them back into a house quickly and not let them fall by the wayside. One of the things that I did when I was an undergrad was work in this place called the Safe Place, because another group of homeless people are actually women who are leaving an abusive home and they have no place to go. So what has worked is not piecemeal where one group is doing this and another group is doing this, is actually getting public and nonprofits together and saying, look, let's not duplicate services. You do food, you do rehousing, you look for homes for veterans. Let's take some of our money, and if you're a homeowner or apartment owner, use some of that money for subsidies, because right now the mayor announced $50 million. What are we going to do with that $50 million? We've got to be really smart with money that's allocated for the homeless problem and not just flush it down. So I think this is something that goes to this affordability, and I think you should ask your future council member, what's your plan?
Thank you for that. David?
It's not a quick fix. It's going to take a lot of different things. One is mental health. There's a lot of issues with mental health with some of the folks who are homeless that we need to address and make sure that we have ways for them to get that addressed. There are some drug addiction issues that they need some assistance with having to get rehabbed through that so that they can get past that drug addiction. And then there are programs already in place to help folks find housing. A friend of mine is executive director of a group called Shelters to Shutters. And what they do is they take folks who've been living in homeless shelters and they help them find housing and a job so that they can afford to stay in that housing. And they actually work with the folks who own that housing at a discounted rate as they are beginning to get on their feet financially. So there's a lot of things we can do. It's a multifaceted issue. It is going to take both mental health, drug rehab, and working jointly with places like Shelters to Shutters and the rescue mission to get folks out of the shelters and progressing into housing that they can afford.
Jeff?
So during my time as a public defender, a vast majority of my clients were either homeless and dealing with issues of substance addiction or mental health. We need to be able to provide them with the resources to be successful. One of the things that I know is already in existence is within the Sheriff's Department. Instead of using our criminal legal system as a solution for these issues, there is what's called the Behavioral Care Center. It works to address not only mental health issues, but also substance addiction issues, and also provides opportunities to connect them to housing. We need to expand those resources and make sure that we are allocating a proper amount of resources and attention to make sure that we are caring for our unhoused neighbors, ensuring that we are addressing those things. Also making sure that they have connection to continuing care once they are connected with housing. Making sure they have access to resources like the Middle Tennessee Mental Health Institute, working with both our state and local partners to ensure that we are connecting them with the services that they need so that they are no longer going through our court system. I think it's truly going to need to be understanding what is already in place, what is feasible, and expanding what we have.
Thank you for that. And again, thank you for the 8 p.m. alarm, which helps me know it's time to conclude. We have reached the conclusion of our question and answer session, and now we're going to move to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to sum up the evening for you from their eyes. And then I will conclude the meeting with a very, very brief closing as well. Before I move to that, I want to thank each of you for respectfully answering all these questions and doing a great job of honoring the time limits that you've been given. So thank you all for that. Now you can go ahead and clap for them if you want to. I'm going to give you another opportunity at the end to do just that. So we'll start with David. 2 minutes for your closing, and you can go to the podium if you'd like.
Well, I'll just stay right here.
Okay, you can stay here if you want to.
You know, first of all, I want to say thank you for the interest that you guys are showing. I had one friend that said, this would be a great evening if at least 30 people show up, and I've lost count. There's approaching 50, if not over, and that's wonderful. The fact that you're interested, one of the things that Russ told me was this is a district that's full of people who are engaged, and that's a wonderful trait to say about the folks who live in District 25. I think that I am the candidate for you to vote for. I have traveled throughout the world, I've traveled throughout this country, and I've lived here in Nashville. And there are things that I've learned from elsewhere that we can apply here. But Nashville is Nashville. Green Hills and Oak Hill is Green Hills and Oak Hill. It's not pick your city. It is a unique place. It's a unique place that has attracted a lot of people that want to live here. And we need to protect that interest and that draw. And together we can do that. We need to embrace growth, because without growth, you go backwards. But it needs to be growth that's planned. It needs to be growth that fits within the infrastructure that we have and can improve infrastructure to support. That's what we need to be doing, and we need to be doing it together. And I hope and ask for your vote come August 3rd or July 14th, which is early voting. And thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Jeff?
So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here this evening. You all represent a profound investment in our community. By being conscientious and present voters and community members, you truly do show that District 25 is a very special place to live. And I'm so very thankful that I have called District 25 home since I've moved to Nashville. Again, my name is Jeff Prepty. I believe that I am the most qualified candidate to represent you on the Nashville Metro Council. I've been an attorney here in Nashville and been working in the community since day one. My work didn't start with this race, and it's not going to end with this race. I'm going to make sure that I am going to work for you every single day and centering your voices and centering your need in every single decision that is being made on the Nashville Metro Council. I humbly ask for your vote, for your support. Early voting starts July 14th. Election day is August 3rd. I want to thank you all so very much.
Rolando?
Well, I like to see this. I like to see having candidates. It shows that people care about their community and that you care. I try to lay it out as honest and as forthright and plain and simple. I think you know where I stand. I said it in my opening. I want to take care of crime, homelessness, addiction, and drugs. I think those are on top of the list. The other things I think are great, but if we don't take care of those things, we're going to have some serious problems down the road, and I don't want to see that. I've made it plain that if you elect me, that's what I will be tackling. I don't think you'll ever have to wonder where I stand on those things and what I'm going to be doing. I'm easily reached. I'm at the clinic, and you can come there. You can have my cell phone number. You can text me. I get texts from people from all over the world, saying all over the world at every hour of the day, and I'm very responsive. I hope that you will elect me. I disagree with my person to the right. I feel like I am the most qualified person. But I love the confidence, and I really appreciate these two and their answers tonight, and Russ for getting this together. And thanks for coming.
Thank you, all three. And what I will say before we conclude is one of the things that I look for when I'm on the campaign trail or looking at candidates, one of the main things is authenticity. And I'm getting to know all these three. And one thing I can say from my vantage point is that's what I see in each of them is authenticity. They're telling you who they are. They're similar in some respects, yet there are differences among them, and they're sharing these differences with you. So I really appreciate them making time to be here. Some had to make some significant adjustments to their schedule to make this happen, and I appreciate all of you doing that and being here, and I thank you for running. And now I think you guys have a little bit of a difficult choice ahead of you. We are going to hang around so you can come up and talk to us. But again, thank you so much, and thank you all for coming.